I don't even know whether I wanted to be an Olympian in 2008. It wasn't the thing that I thought I was going to be doing. Oh, athletes, you're so lazy. Like, it's so, how are you so lazy? I'm like, because I work so hard that I really have to value and appreciate this rest. I came back to the UK, I think it was like May 2016 because...
Well, tell them to grow up.
No, that's not, oh my goodness, I'm gonna just zip. I'm not saying anything.
I didn't say that, that wasn't me, that was Leonard. We don't really kind of do the fancy intros because I find doing podcast intros is probably the most awkward part for everyone. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm the exact same way as well. Yeah. So on some of my podcasts, I'll do the intro in the moment, but on some of them I'm just like, okay, we're going to record this afterwards because I like the flow of this conversation and we're already rolling. This is already recording, so let's just keep going. Yeah,
I always find, like, I did one the other day actually with two people and I made them introduce one another. Okay. And it was quite fun, but they both died inside originally, which was quite jokes. But it took away the fear of not selling yourself. Do you know what I mean? Because most people are either one end of I'm backing myself, or I'm too shy to say how good I really am.
Yeah.
But it's all fun. But I mean, John Vine and Olympic long jump, aren't we? So.
I don't know what to say to that.
There you go. Exactly. It's
that's so weird because I'm not normally a shy person.
That's what I mean. If I was to introduce you, like, probably give it the big one, blah blah, and then I pass over to you, and you're kind of just like.
So yeah, because you're like, oh, now what do I have to live up to? But yeah, it's cool. It's cool.
Yeah, it's nice. But how are you getting on?
How am I getting on?
Yeah, how are you?
It's a very broad question. Today has been fine. I jumped into a sand pit. Knees bugging me a little bit, but we move. We keep going. We soldier on.
It's all part of the job.
The weekend was lovely with the sunshine. I'm always happy when the sun is shining. So I say always, but most of the time I'm happy when the sun is shining. So that's been a source of gratitude. How about you? How are you doing?
Good. I was just saying to you a minute ago, having one of those days where you turn up to the gym, you start the warm up, you feel dreadful, and you just go home. But the best thing though was me telling you that. I've been like, oh god, I sounded like such an idiot. And then you're like, oh, glad it's not just me.
Yeah.
It's like, it's nice to know that other people have those days as well. Because like at the end of the day, as an athlete or kind of ex-athlete or whatever, you feel like you should be performing at this level all the time, and it's not possible, is it?
No, yeah, you have to have those ebbs and flows. I'm a massive proponent of recovery, like the importance of rest and recovery routines literally just knit into the fabric of your days, your weeks, your months. I think as an athlete, or people have this perspective that we're go, working hard 24/7, but it's like the intensity comes when we are at the track. Yeah, we work hard, but we also rest hard. Like, you see, there's this common, people say, oh, athletes, you're so lazy. Like, it's so, how are you so lazy? I'm like, because I work so hard that I really have to value and appreciate this rest. So sometimes your body just doesn't want to do what it wants to, like what you want it to do. But then you have to appreciate, do you know what, maybe it's telling me something that I am not really like aware of in that moment. And it's okay to just rest and lean into that.
Would you say you're good at listening to your body?
Sometimes it's funny because I'm 33 and I've been doing this for a while, since I was 14, as I just mentioned then. And there are some times when I really honor what my body is saying, and there's other times when I let my head override what my body needs, and that kind of happened today because I just wanted to push through. I wanted to soldier through, and my body was like, this knee, you probably need to just take a step back. And I was trying to fight through, and thankfully my coach was able to be that voice of reason, and we're able to just shift and adapt the session. So it's not necessarily going straight from what Dan Paff would call plan A to just getting on the bike, which is what a lot of old school coaches used to do, and what actually a lot of athletes do these days. It's like as soon as they've got a tiny niggle, they're like jumping on the bike. They're so protective.
We've all
but
been
it's
there.
Taking those little steps. So hey, what's plan B? Let's stick as close to plan A as possible, and adapting in those small changes. And so yeah, it happens sometimes where I'm in tune, and in other times when I just ignore it.
Yeah. You say you're coached by Dan Paff, legend, or self-coached? How's it going at the moment?
No, in the past.
Oh,
so
okay,
I
sure.
do link back to him just because I think every single one of the coaches that I've worked with has been very pivotal and just key in my athlete formation. But I worked with him 2014 to 2016 in Phoenix. Then I had my 2-year break, retirement, and came back to the track. And then I was self-coached under his tutelage still. So send across video footage, still sticking to the 3-day rollover program. Anyone who's worked with Dan or understands the artist program will know what I'm referring to when I talk about the 3-day rollover. And that became my program essentially for my return to the track until, I mean, that's what I jumped my current personal best on in 2019, 686. So, I mean, what he says, it works. It really is so helpful.
What was it like training in America compared to the UK?
Well, I mean, America's so large, so it really depends on where you're training. But for me, I was in Phoenix. It's a desert. So I really enjoyed, like I said, I'm always happy in the sunshine. So when I was out there, I felt there was a lot of joy. I remember turning up to the track on day one, and I started on the same day that Olympic, I think he's a silver medalist, Fabrice Lapierre, started with his insane PR of like 870 or something like that. And yeah, we just became really close friends because it's like we both started on the same day. And my other friend, Lacey Henderson, who's a American Paralympic long jumper and sprinter. And just training there, for me, it was the weather, for sure, the sunshine, but also the people. They were just like, I mentioned those 2 people specifically, but there were myriad other Olympians, Paralympians, the support team, who just fed into me at a time when I really needed like that growth and that support. And I managed to like shift language, shift perspective from like negative to positive, and there was just, it was just joyous. When I talk about it, it's just like these golden years, and I'm really glad for that experience because it's one of those highlight moments that I'll hopefully remember in my long career in athletics.
So when you came back to the UK, was that what was the reasoning behind coming back to the UK?
I came back to the UK, I think it was like May 2016, because in my first competition of the year, of the outdoor season, I jumped 6 meters and 63 centimeters. Woohoo! And it was like 7 centimeters off the Olympic standard that year. I was supremely excited. I was in Texas in El Paso. And in the 6th round, I took my first step and had ruptured my Achilles tendon.
First step on the runway?
Yeah. 6th round, because I was just like, yeah, we're in flow, we're feeling great. I'd not had any like issues with it for the past few weeks leading up to that point. I felt really strong. And clearly my body just was like, no, we're gonna break today. So that was when I retired, because I was just like, that was my 3rd surgery essentially. That would have been my 2nd missed games, missed London in 2012. And knowing that I was going to miss Rio, and knowing that it would be another 4 years, little did I know, 5-year cycle to the next games, I was just like, I wasn't willing to invest anymore. The investment felt like a sacrifice. And not just for myself, but friends, family, fans, those people who support you. I just honestly felt broken to pieces. It was a hard decision, but a really easy one at the same time.
So if we were to go back a little bit, you just mentioned there that you missed London. You jumped 680 that year.
Yeah.
So that was a couple of weeks before trials.
Yeah.
And then trials, you had a bit of disappointing trials.
I say that it's funny because we say that from the perspective of it being disappointing because I jumped 680 3 weeks before that or 2 weeks before that. Yeah. But my PR before jumping 680 was 636.
Yeah.
So it was a big PB.
Up and down.
And so if I'd gone into that trials without having jumped that 680, 648, I think I jumped, or 650 something. 648, wow. Yeah. Wow, it's literally ingrained into my head. I think I finished 4th or 5th with 648 behind a strong field. I think Jessica Ennis-Hill was competing. I was there. Probably Lorraine jumped ahead of me, and Shara, obviously. Potentially Jazz might have been ahead of me as well. I don't know whether I finished 4th or 5th.
Yeah.
But yeah, even distance-wise, position-wise, not horrendous. And I know that the 2 weeks preceding that, my back had flared up crazily. So I felt, yes, now looking back, like in the moment, I felt like I'd failed myself, but I can give myself so much grace and compassion to that like 22-year-old girl who had just graduated from university that same year, jumped a massive personal best. And actually, if I'd been backed and supported in the way that I should have been, probably the next few years would have been me going on the up and up. Instead, because of the words that were used and the lack of support that I received off the back of what should have been an incredibly breakthrough season, were destroying, really destructive actually, and led me to kind of having these inconsistent seasons and injury upon injury. And I was just in a broken place for the next 2 years because of what should have been such a joyous moment just like cut down in 2012, honestly. So I look at that through very bittersweet eyes. I am so grateful for that 680. I'm so grateful that somebody recorded it. I even looked at the film footage of that maybe over the weekend because I was just looking at an old hard drive that I had. And I just felt so much joy. Every time I see it, I'm just like, oh my gosh, bring me back to that young girl again who just jumped out of her skin. And if I tell you about that day, I almost didn't compete. I called my coach 3 times on that day, my then coach, Larry Achike, and I was like, it's too hot. I can't do this. I can't even warm up. I don't think I can. Like, genuinely, I was pulling out of that competition. Every single jump in that meet was a PB, I think. I think I jumped like 650, 640. I was just PB, and in every single round apart from when I'd fouled. And that final round was like, if I foul, I foul. We'll see. I know I need an extra 3 centimeters to get to the European Championships that year, and I ended up jumping an extra 20 or 33 centimeters. So when you go for it, you go for it, and good things happen.
That is literally it. I think this sport, as we know, is literally filled with highs and lows. There's probably more lows in this sport than there are highs, but the highs are so high that we're constantly chasing that next one, regardless. And the fact that you kind of had one of those days where it was like, oh, you were this close to pulling out, but then you stayed, you persisted through it, and then you got the reward for that. How did you kind of take that and that feeling and that kind of optimism going forward to the next kind of competitions after that?
Yeah, interesting question. Taking that optimism heading forward. I think it's funny as well because we just mentioned coaches. We're mentioning the power of coaches. I always talk about the power of the team. And Lucas today just advising me, listen to your body. Let's just take a step back. Dan with his wisdom, and Larry in that moment, who on the third call basically just didn't pick up the phone. He was just like, I've already told the girl what to do. She's staying in the comp. Hopefully she competes. And so I would say it's not necessarily my optimism that carried me through. It was really the support team that I had and their belief in me, because even thinking about it, like, I can get emotional. The amount of times where I've just felt like, what is the point? Or do I really have the talent or the capacity to jump far? Maybe moments where you just doubt yourself, or you don't have that joy anymore. And I think 2012 really depleted the joy from me, because that was the first time in my life that I've ever gone after something and didn't succeed. Up to that point, 22 years of age, I went to the university of my choice. I went to the school of my choices. I was an A-star student, and not through like lack of hard work. I worked hard for these things, but it was just joyous. Like, I don't remember there being rainy days. And suddenly 2012 like just switched my mentality around what that looks like. And I went from being someone who was super optimistic to someone who these days I'm kind of like, okay, Abs, like, we've got to remember to stay hopeful, to not be this. I was reading this book, Rational Optimist by Matt Ridley, over the past few weeks, because I'm a slow reader at the moment. And it was just like a reminder, okay, perspective. There is actually reason to hope. So it's not innate necessarily for me right now, but it's something that I'm proactively working on a daily basis. And I'm grateful for my team and what I call accountability partners, my people, to remind me to just speak life, to be inspiring, to be inspired, and to stay hopeful and positive and optimistic.
Staying positive, I think, regardless if that's sport or in life, is so important, but something that we all naturally find quite hard to do at certain times. You said, like, a minute ago, you were watching that video of the 680 jump at the weekend, just coincidentally. Do you ever go back and look at competitions or good moments or in the sport or at sport to then bring you up in the present and to then help you go forward in the future with that. So, does that make sense?
It does make sense. Visualization is a great anchor. So for sure, I have on my phone, because obviously we update our phones so frequently these days, right? So this phone maybe has jumps up to 2019, or maybe I've downloaded the 2019 jumps just because that was such a good year. But I definitely go back and I'll look at it on my phone, especially if I've had a hard day or I'm having a hard session or I'm preparing for what I know may be a tough session. The last few months have been quite tough, like finding my rhythm again off the back of last year, which was really like objectively terrible year. I had some high moments, but objectively the numbers were not doing what they needed to be doing and my body wasn't doing what it needed to be doing. So I've had a lot of like recovery to go through, and what has kept me going is looking at that and being like, okay, I am a good jumper. You don't just lose that talent. Talent does not die like that. I think it was Kelly Sutherton who one day said to me, I'm name dropping because it feels tacky, but I'm saying these names because these are people that are in your circle, or people that I looked at Kelly when she said that to me on that day in 2016. Exactly. And I'm like, wow, like you would deign to not, I don't know whether the word is deign, but you would like encourage me in that way. Like, thank you. Like I say that to say thank you, because a phrase or a word that means nothing to that person potentially, they're just saying it to encourage you, that stuck. She said that to me in 2016, and I remember it being a terrible indoor competition. I was crying my eyes out. I'd switched takeoff legs essentially, and it hadn't worked out that time round. And she just basically said to me, talent never dies. So that is sticky. And I talk about the power of affirmations and visualization, but words are so powerful, and that becomes my mantra. It just pops up every so often, like it has now. And so when I look back at those videos, I'm reminded, like, that is still in me. I can still jump far. I'm working hard, and hard work pays off. I've been here before when I've been on my knees, when I've kind of not been able to, I've had to come back from an injury or surgery or whatever, and I've made it through, so I can do it again. So those, going back to the video point, when I look at those videos, I see who I was, and I also see what I can be again, and that I can go even further.
That's cool. That's cool to hear. I feel like using things to go forward and visualization and kind of how it all links to mindset, and then how mindset links to physical performance. Those things are things that you kind of can't really take for granted. I feel like you get that with experience though. Like if I was to look back on my kind of junior or youth career, I probably wasn't doing that sort of thing. Like, were you doing were these sort of things that you do now in your kind of youth and junior career? Because you had a really successful youth junior career.
Oh, first of all, I like the point around the mind-body connection. It's so important because I think people think it's like woo, but it's not, because let's be real. When you're embarrassed, your face flushes. Sure. Why is your body representing your mental, emotional state? When you have butterflies in your stomach, that's because you're nervous. That's a physical representation of what's happening mentally and emotionally. So we have to really understand the power of that mind-body connection, first and foremost. And I'd say, like, secondly, and this is what I always do, my brain just kind of goes off on one and suddenly I've forgotten the question, but if I keep talking, maybe it'll come back.
I was trying to remember it as well.
What was that point?
Me.
Yeah, I really just threw myself off because I was like, I'm very passionate about this mind-body connection point.
Keep going.
Going back to youth. So, and visualization. And the power of my words. So I was just always someone who was quite optimistic and hopeful. And like I said, things had always gone well for me for the most part. So I don't think I knew what negative language was. It just wasn't in my vocabulary. I've grown up in a Christian household as well. I am a believer in God. I read my Bible every day. And I think when you read the word, the language is of being the head and not the tail, being victorious, someone who is empowered to do great things. So for me, that language has always been one of victory and not defeat. And so I guess that just kind of carries its way into every area of my life, from academics to the sandpit. But I also think I was incredibly blessed to be surrounded by really good athletes, like literally world-class Olympic athletes in my formative years. So the year when I jumped 680, that year I was training alongside Trisha Smith, a Jamaican triple jumper. Like, I think she was world champion in 2005, or maybe that was Yamile. So I was training with as well Yamile Aldama, also world champion, legend. Also an amazing legend. And I would go in training camps, and I was doing circuits and training with Chrissy Ahurigu. And so these people I'm seeing. So that's visualization, because I'm seeing them jump into a sandpit. You know, Chris Tomlinson, I can't like neglect to say these legendary names, because these were people that went before me, but I'm so grateful that I was in that group, because not everybody would have had that opportunity. And it was good because they would tell me to pull my finger out. Like Yamile, I just remember her in my ear, like, just like, Abby, like, work harder. Like, I don't know, she's just always, I was never working hard enough for her. Like, I was never doing anything right. And I don't even say that in a bad way. I just say that in like, oh my goodness, thank you, Yami, for pulling me up and for making me pull my finger out and for shifting my attitude, because I went into that group as like a bit of a spoiled princess who kind of got away with slacking because, you know what, oh, I can't do that. I can't do press ups properly. I'll do that part of the work, but I won't do that part of the work. You can't be a diva in a group where you've got the queens of the track and field.
You get exposed.
So you get very exposed. And so I'm so thankful for that exposing. I'm so thankful that they were like, nah, stop talking that nonsense, please. Yeah. Grow up and look at what we're doing and do what we're doing. So yeah, they weren't just kind of telling me what to do, but they were showing me what to do as well. Yeah. And that's so powerful.
Do you feel like, kind of, you just said there about how you could get away with things, like potentially not working as hard, but because the results were still coming, you were still jumping far, you were still winning competitions, so you perhaps as a younger athlete didn't think you needed to make those changes because the results were there. But then again, I guess in hindsight, looking back at it, you could also be like, well, if I did make those changes, if I did work extra hard, then perhaps I would have jumped even further. I would have been even more successful, which, let's face it, that's life, that's sport. You can always have hindsight. You can always look back and say ifs, buts, what ifs. But at the end of the day, you didn't do that and you're here now. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it's easy to look back and make those kind of what ifs, but athletics is about learning. Sport and life is about learning from your mistakes, the losses and the wins, but you always probably learn more from the losses and the mistakes than you do from the wins, because you don't have any reason to change something if you've succeeded, because don't fix what ain't broke. Do you know what I mean?
No, I absolutely hear you, and I love that, because in my junior career, and again, there was a lot of reflection on this weekend when I found this hard drive, but I just saw the joy that I felt. And I remember thinking in 2007, when I made my first Great Britain representation as a junior athlete at 17 years old, and went to the World Youths. And I didn't even finish. I didn't even get to the final. Like, I think I finished 15th in the quali. I didn't jump over 6 meters in that competition, but I jumped 6 meters to get there. And that was like a personal best to even get there. And the satisfaction, the contentment that I felt, and that was okay. So I gave everything that I needed to give to get to that point, and I am grateful for that. There's not been a point where I can look back, or I might, on reflection, think where the points were, but there's not been a point where I can look back and say, actually, I regret not giving 100% in that moment, because I feel like I've always given 100% of what I can give in that moment. I wasn't grown enough before I was in the group with Yamile and Chris and Trisha, Larry, to be able to have my head screwed on in that way, to be like, oh, actually, Abigail, you're compromising what you're doing. I didn't even know. There wasn't even that level of awareness, because I thought that I was giving 100. And I think that's the difference. Like, I don't know. That's actually, I'm going to probably go back away and reflect on that question, but I don't really regret that junior career. Like, I would not say by any stretch of the imagination that it was a great one, but it was a fun one, and I appreciate that, because my goodness, I'm so grateful I didn't have that level of pressure on myself that I know maybe other junior athletes have. I even remember being at the British champs, not the British champs, the grade, what is the one? English schools.
Yeah.
And being on the podium.
Throwback.
And I was on silver. I was silver in the English schools. I was silver in the British schools behind, I'm not going to say her name because now I'm going to embarrass her. But essentially, she hadn't jumped 6 meters, but she'd won the meet. And she was just so distraught. And I thought, this is wild. I just can't comprehend it. But we get to that point and we're like, I didn't achieve this amazing goal, but you won gold. Or I didn't do this thing, but you did that. And it's just like, we're so hard on ourselves. And I see that in myself now. And I'm just like, I just never would have thought that I would have got to that point, but it happens to us all. And we kind of just need to do that evaluation and just really reflect and say, hey, what do we need to value? And how can we still find joy in this very difficult journey of sport, of life, of whatever that looks like?
Yeah, I think that's that pressure of expectation that you put on oneself. I, for one, have been there so many times where you perform well, you either run a PB or you win a competition and you're still fuming afterwards. Like, this happened to me so many times, like when I was younger, because you're like, oh, I didn't do this. I didn't have the perfect race. I clipped hurdle 9, and you just go home fuming. You got a slump on the way home. You sat in the car just fuming, and then literally like a few days later, you speak to your coach. You have time to process, and you're like, you know what? It was actually fine. Yeah, I'm being an idiot. Or you'd look back on it like at the end of the season or whatnot, and you'd be like, it's fine. But in that moment, it's so hard to just be like, that was good. I am happy. As an athlete, you're happy but never satisfied, and that's kind of dangerous at times, but also what makes athletes so great and what makes you pursue better. Because if you're not pursuing better, then what's the point? Because you're just content. You might as well just stop.
That's when it's time to throw in the towel.
Exactly.
Right? It's like,
exactly.
Oh, well, I've done everything that I wanted to do. And because when you're working from a place of like that, I don't know, when you're not hungry for more, you can't really give more of yourself. You can't give 100. Because it's not like that priority anymore. It's not that thing that you're passionate about I know that's why I stopped in 2016, because I was like, I literally can't give any more of my soul to this. I could totally physically come back from this easy, but there's no way I can give more of myself than I've already given to see the results that have happened. So yeah, sometimes you just need to pause, because I think that's burnout, right? That's like, you've broken down to the point where it's like, I really can't give any more.
And that's where you get those kinds of intrusive thoughts that come in. Like I find for myself, when I'm tired or when I'm kind of overworked or whatnot, that's when all the negative thoughts come in, regardless of what it is, and then your head's just a mess. But if you are recovered, if you are sleeping enough, if you are in a better headspace, those negative thoughts just get slapped away. All right, everyone, we're just going to take a quick break from the show to introduce our sponsor, Rewire Fitness. Rewire is a mental fitness platform that helps athletes to become healthier, more resilient, and to reach their full potential. But most of all, it helps athletes to reduce the likelihood of burnout. This is something very close to my heart, and perhaps if I knew about this in 2020 when I was going through the worst bits of my burnout, it might have kept me competing in the sport. I've been using Rewire Fitness for some time now, and it's genuinely transformed my morning routine. I use the app to test my readiness for the day ahead before suggesting a number of cognitive training exercises to help me boost my productivity, my performance, or my rest throughout the day. If you're keen to explore new ways of reducing your stress or optimizing your performance on and off the track, head to theathleteplace.com/podcast to get 20% off your first year at Rewire Fitness. Back to the show. But like for me, I remember when I was going through my burnout, I got to that point where I was like, I just don't want to get to 30 and having only run around in circles, like not having done anything else in my life, not having reached the potential, blah, blah, blah. But if I look back on it now, I'm like, well, obviously I'm going to think those things because I was in a terrible headspace and I was letting those negative thoughts come in. Whereas if I was in a better headspace, but still probably facing that burnout, I would have been in a much better position to slap those negative thoughts away and to actually progress and move forward. But I guess, again, hindsight, it's a tricky one.
And look at it from like a more objective perspective, because the beauty of you'd be more mindful. So you'd practice like mindfulness. So it's like when you're listening to that, when you're hearing what you're saying to yourself, you'd be like, but let's get curious here. is that really true? I'm going to really hit 30 and all I've done is run around in a circle. Oh, wait, am I not a university graduate?
I was saying this at 20
oh,
years
wait,
old
am I not like building a business? Oh, wait, like...
This was all before. This was when I was literally in my second year at uni. It was hilarious because I literally PB'd in my last ever race. Literally PB'd in my last ever race. Quit my group. Quit the sport. 2 weeks later, COVID. Boom, done. But like at that point, I think I was just lost. I was confused. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know the direction I was going. I was in a group that definitely wasn't right for me. I was kind of plateauing in every single way in my life, and like for me, the thing I'm probably most scared of is like that stagnant like life where you're just comfortable, you're just doing the same thing over and over again and you're fine with that. Like for me, that's something that I never want. And that's each their own. Like a lot of people want kind of that stability or whatnot, but like for me, I'm very much on the side of I always want better. I think it's naturally just ingrained in me, and that's probably, it's got pros and cons having that for sure. But it's just the way you deal with these things and the way you kind of action these things as well. But
yeah, no, I completely agree.
Yeah, it's a strange one. You touched earlier about how you were an A-star student and how you got into the university you wanted to. Was that UCL?
Yeah,
Law?
University College
Yeah.
London.
How's that?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But
It
I
doesn't
probably,
sound
I
like
know,
it.
I know. I literally, as I said that, I was like, oh,
Straight up hesitation.
my, like, sorry, subconsciously something was telling on me. No, I think it was difficult for me to have the full experience because that was the year where I fell in love with athletics as well. So the year that I started, 2008, I remember in my interview for university, I said, like, athletics, it is obviously in my personal statement, but I was like, yeah, athletics is just this thing that I do on the side. I've been able to...
How good were you at this point?
I mean, I'd done GB, I'd done England
That's
teams.
mad. For people listening to that, thinking, oh yeah, just do that on the side. I remember writing my CV when I was that age and I had nothing else to put on it.
Yeah, I mean, up to that point, I'd done myriad things. Like, so I'd done like gymnastics, I'd played netball, I'd done so many things at higher levels as well, that not necessarily higher levels, but I'd literally just seen them as hobbies. They were just things that I loved to do. And then suddenly I was away for 2 weeks after Freshers Fortnight, going to the Commonwealth Youth Games, come back with a gold medal. Didn't jump 6 meters to get that gold medal, by the way, but who cares? I wasn't crying about it. I was like, I've got this gold medal. I've had this incredible experience in India. And I really just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the training even more. And it was also really hard because I was in the centre of London, but my training would be in Stoke-on-Trent or in Birmingham or at Lee Valley, which I had to like drive an hour to, or I remember probably coming to university, not bringing my car, and then 2 weeks after going back home and picking up my car because I just needed the car to drive to all these different locations. So I couldn't invest everything into the uni life. So that's probably the only thing I'd say. I've never had a uni experience in the way that maybe other people envision it as going out all the time, because I just couldn't. I had to wake up for training. I had to commit that. I had to commit to that around my university lectures. And I actually think my university suffered as a result of my not really knowing how to balance well the academics with the training demands. And it was only in my final year of university where I really figured it out. And that was where I jumped the 680, and that was where I was on a whole new level of dedication. And that's why sport, the transfer of the things that I learn in sport, carry over in so many other ways. It clearly carried over that level of discipline that I was given working with Larry, who was like, you can't come late. These simple concepts that if people accept it, because it's in my blood, I'm African, you know, we run to African timing. He was like, no. We run to Larry's timing, and we've said we're going to start at, 6:30 in the morning for lifting. Like, I would get to Brunel, I think, for as soon as it opened, so maybe 7 a.m. from where I was living in Camden. So I would have to drive across there and then get back for my 9 a.m. or 9:30 a.m. lecture. So that would be for a weight session, for example. And I'm like, did this really happen? Did I really do this? Because I could never envision me doing that right now. But that was my uni experience. It was quite intense, and it was pretty much all in for the athletics. Even my year abroad in France I was back and forth between Marseille and London pretty much every single month for like scans. That's probably one of my most injured years. I was about 3 or 4 kilos heavier than I needed to be because I just went to the boulangerie every day and ate baguettes.
Don't blame you. Sounds better than training.
I was like, this is amazing. And I was just like in my own world. And so, yeah, it was just, I'm so grateful that I went to UCL because I think it's a really amazing university. And I've attended alumni events since then. I'm connected with the community. But I didn't have necessarily that typical uni experience.
Yeah. And if you were to look back on that, would you change that or anything about it?
Not really. Not necessarily, because as much as I'd want to change like the painful events of not going to 2012 and not going to 2016, I do think these are all part of my story. And, you know, so I wouldn't change the UCL experience, because I've had so for example, I think a lot of people, maybe I have a false assumption, but I think a lot of people make a lot of close friends at university that become their lifelong friends. And I would say I have like a handful, 4 or 5, but potentially there would have been way more if I'd been going out all the time with people or had those shared connections. Even the athletics club at the university, I couldn't really join because I had my own training group and coach and my own training times, and I couldn't do their competitions because it didn't match with my competition schedule. So then you don't kind of have that common group. My people were the athletes and the track and field people and the coaches and stuff like that. So no, it's funny. Oh my goodness, you're really making me do some deep reflection. But right now I'm going to say no regrets. I enjoyed it. I'm grateful for the experience, and we'll put a bow on that.
Nice. And going to, I think one of the things I want to discuss is going to university as a high level athlete, but going to a university that doesn't specialize in sport. Because if you're like nowadays, you probably look at the university options you've got. If you want to focus on your athletics, for example, you're probably looking at Loughborough, Birmingham, Brunel, a couple others. But UCL is definitely not a sports kind of focused university. But there's a lot of student athletes out there that are looking to go to universities or colleges, but they want to have that. They don't want to sacrifice their studies and their potential for careers, but they also don't want to sacrifice their athletics and what they've got and what they enjoy for that. What do you think about that?
I understand the dilemma, actually, but from my perspective, I didn't see athletics as, I don't even know whether I wanted to be an Olympian in 2008. It wasn't the thing that I thought I was going to be doing. And here I am, 33, still doing it. But anyway,
you take it.
Yeah, but I think, so I've got a couple of answers here. Right Track Sport, you can Google them, have a look into who they are, but if they still exist.
Yeah, Jonathan and Laurie, legends.
Okay, great. Yeah. So they still exist. And I know that I think Jonathan went to Harvard, so did the other founding partner. She went to Harvard, and they were still decent athletes competing at British champs and jumping big distances. And so it's possible. I look at examples, and also the reason I plugged them is because if you are looking for a great university, especially in the States, and to also be able to combine the academics and the sport, they will support that whole process from beginning to end. They will help you, get it across to your parents, help you with the exams that you need to go over there, the whole shebang. So definitely hit them up. And I would say if you look at examples like Dina Asher-Smith, I believe she went to KCL, King's College London, which is a great university. She studied history, I think. I'm saying these things. I might be wrong. I know that Christina Hurrigo, very smart, went to UCL as well, my university. Or I guess I went to hers because she went ahead of me. And yeah, she was able to be an incredible success in track. So there's many people who have done it. I think if you are struggling or if you feel like it's too big a challenge, have those conversations with people. Reach out to myself or to the people that I've just named, or go to Right Track Sport, for example, and have that conversation, because I think fear, it becomes more overwhelming and clouds our judgment when we don't let it out in the open, and when we don't express those fears. If you're just keeping it in your head, like you said, those destructive thoughts that allowed you to spiral into this because you were in this negative emotional state, but it started somewhere and then it grew into this big monster and led to this burnout and you quitting a sport that you really enjoyed and loved. And so we can get to that point with anything in our lives. And it's mainly because we're not questioning it. It's mainly because we're not laying it out on the table and having those conversations with people who actually can help, whether it's mentorship, whether it's coaching, whether it's just with our peers, peer-to-peer coaching, because they'll basically see it and listen to what you're saying and be like, seriously? And they try to say it in like a non-judgmental voice because they want to be loving, but they want to be like, it's kind of funny. It's like, no way, this is not as big a deal as you think it is. And then you're able to create solutions together. And it's just brought me on to the point of like, for me, when I decided that I wanted to move from London to Phoenix in Arizona, I made that decision off the back of a brainstorming session with my then 8-year-old sister, I think, and my dad. We just like basically lay out this big A3 sheet of paper with colored pens and we're like, hey, what are our options? And I remember Phoenix being an option, and I think there was like Florida being an option. And I was like, those are the only options that I can see for me to continue doing this sport that I enjoy. And I was just like, but those don't seem feasible. That seems crazy. Like, how? I don't even know that person. How am I going to make that happen? And suddenly we just started to fill in the gaps, and any questions, any doubts, any fears that I had around that. My 8-year-old sister, just see it from that perspective of like a child. Like, why are we saying this isn't possible? Why are we saying that this is going to be too hard to do? Like, we see impossible is nothing. So yeah, just bring it out into the open, have those conversations, and hopefully you can find a positive way forward.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love that example, like using your younger sister and your dad, because like family are usually the ones that are always our first point of call. And then there's, again, what you were saying there about the peer-to-peer support and guidance, like speaking to other people that get it and have been in the same situations as you. That's literally the entire reasoning behind the Athlete Place. Like using the experiences of other athletes that are in the exact same situation as you or have been previously. You can learn from their mistakes. You can help other people. You can help people after you. You don't have to make these same mistakes that hundreds of thousands of people have made before us, like just because they have. Do you know what I mean? But it's I don't know. I feel like this community is amazing, and like we're all in it together, and we're all trying to improve our own performances. And if you can help somebody else, then more power. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everyone wins, which is really cool. One of the things I want to talk to you about is you do a lot outside of your sport. So you've done speaking, you've done many side hustles. I remember you talking about your kind of tutoring service that you've done.
Yeah.
How important do you think having things outside of sport is for athletes?
Oh, how important having things outside of sports. So I think that...
Strap in, guys.
Yeah. No. I'm just thinking like, it's a good one. It's a good one because we have this idea that we have to be 1000%, 100% focused on this one goal, this one objective. It has to be this all-consuming thing, because if we have other things that are distracting us and taking our attention from it, then that's a negative. And I agree with that up to a point, because I have definitely been in that place where it has been the be-all and end-all. So when I was in Phoenix, I feel like those were years when I was really thriving and really enjoying myself in what I was doing in the sport. And I think it showed in my results within literally 2 months of being there, the first 2 months of being there. I returned to Europe, competed. My first meet was, fine, but my second meet I jumped 673, like a massive indoor PR. And I really attribute that to having that 100% focus, but also the community, there were so many other things that enabled me to be successful. And there were many other highlight points, like the big opening distances that I ended up being able to open up competitions with. But I can also see it from the other perspective, because I know that in 2019, when I jumped my 686 personal best, that came whilst I was running a business, Manchester Tutors, which I no longer run anymore. But that was something that I ran for over 5 years or so. And that was taking a lot of my time. So I was managing a team of employees, a small team of employees, but the contractors, so the tutors, there were about 50 active contractors who were working in schools and academies, in homes across Manchester and online. So there was a lot going on. There was a lot of moving pieces. I really enjoyed it though. And for me, I found that a necessary distraction to counterbalance what could have been very intensive route back to jumping far into a sandpit. And
I love how simply you put it.
I have to minimize it so it doesn't become too big in my head sometimes. And also obviously that route back to the Olympic Games, which was the big thing that I really, really, really wanted to do and really wanted to do successfully. But I knew that I couldn't do that because I'd done it all in before, and it had taken so much from me. And obviously the end result wasn't what I wanted it to be, 2016 retirement. I thought, do you know what? I already have this business going, and I've decided that there's unfinished business and I want to come back to the track. I'm not going to give up other things, but I'm going to make a way for this to still be a strong priority in my life. Priority actually means priori, which means, that one thing. So we can't, when people say they've got multiple priorities, that's not necessarily true. But for me, I'm going to butcher the word, and I'm going to say, actually, my two priorities, I'm being the idiot now, at that time were athletics and the business, because I needed the business for my sanity, but also financially. I'm so thankful that I had that business, because I was able to provide not just for myself, but for those 50 other contractors and the employees that were under my payroll. And that's always my vision, to be able to support people beyond myself, whether it's inspiring, because when you deliver talks, or when you on panels, or delivering workshops that are about peak performance and resilience and wellness, all these things that we learn in sport, trying to apply it to other people's lives so they can just have this up leveling. I'm all about encouraging and equipping others to fulfill their Olympic dreams, whatever that looks like in their lives, right? So whether it's that, or whether it's literally providing financially for somebody because we've got work coming in that I've been able to get off the back of building relationships, or these client relationships, whatever that looks like. And so, yeah, it gets me excited, because I am passionate about athletics, but I'm also supremely passionate about business because of the avenues that opens, for not just for myself, but for others.
I think there's so many crossovers between the two. I remember when I was on, where was I going? I was going to my first competition abroad. I was on the Eurostar going to Belgium, and I was going with my mum, and our 2 train tickets were sat in a 2 in between these 8 guys that were going on a stag do. So that was fun. Great competition prep. But the guy who we were sat next to was like asking what we're doing, he was asking where we're going, told him blah blah blah, and he was really fascinated by the fact that I was a young athlete, and he was basically kind of talking about how the transferable skills are so amazing, and that he kind of wished he did sport when he was younger, or at least pursued it more. But he was also kind of using the examples of, he owned his own company. I forgot to include that important part. He owned his own company, and he was basically saying that if people were going to interview with him, or someone like me, someone fresh out of uni, for example, the person that's got the sport rather than the person that doesn't, if their grade was probably not as good or more average than amazing, he'd probably still go with the person with the athletics or the sport background, because of those skills that you mentioned earlier, the turning up on time, the resilience, the motivation, the being able to work through anything, or to kind of get jobs done to a high standard, the perfectionism, like all these traits that are so transferable across sport and into business and in life, just goes to show how important it is to make sure that you do your sport and you do keep it as a priority, but also to have those other things going on as well. Because you have the two, then you've got a great shot. And I think there's so many people, myself, my own experiences, I came to uni with the primary kind of focus of training, and I'm not an academic background. I didn't have any hobbies really outside of my sport other than computer games. But coming to university with just my entire focus on to run around in circles, essentially, that was a dangerous way for me to go, because if it wasn't for me getting my burnout, and if it wasn't for me kind of trying to start a business and move that forward, I don't know what I'd be doing right now. And because I look back on, I say I've had friends in sport that have gone to they're still doing it, and they've gone to create CVs and sending job applications and stuff like that, because let's face it, sometimes you have to have a job as well as doing as your sport. But they go, I've got nothing on it. I've got nothing to put on my CV. And it's like, if you've gone your whole way through life with just that single focus, if something doesn't go perfectly with that thing, then you're going to struggle, because you haven't got that backup. You haven't got those other skill sets that you can kind of improve from something rather than starting from scratch. Because it's hard to start from scratch when you're in your 20s. It's easy to start from scratch when you're in your teens. Naturally, right?
Okay, I'm just gonna be like, I hate. So I just want to challenge you on that, because
we love this.
You're so cute. I feel like, as an old 33-year-old, mature one, you're like, it's hard to start from scratch in your 20s. Absolutely not. It isn't. No, it isn't.
Harder.
But I mean, it's also, then maybe it's language that we need to challenge, because how many people who are like 60, 70, 80 start new hobbies? And even myself, I started Manchester Cheetahs at 26, 27. So, and I know that I'm going to start something new this year, next year, and in future years to come. So I think it's kind of just giving yourself grace, and also understanding that it's hard for me to say, have lots of things going on, because I know how hard and distracting that can be, and draining it, how draining it can be as well. And it depends on your personality type. It depends on so many factors, because some people really just have to be very single-minded in their pursuit. And yes, when things aren't going great, that can be supremely dangerous. But I guess the caveat to that, I don't know whether that's the right word, but essentially, I guess the important thing would be for them to make sure they have safety net of people. So if their safety net isn't necessarily extracurricular activities, because they want to go home and sleep for the whole day after their training, as opposed to doing other things like creating a business or learning a skill or a hobby, that's okay. But when things aren't going great, please make sure you have someone to lean on. Please make sure you have someone to talk to, because unfortunately we do hit these moments of failure. We do hit these low moments. And then, you know what, when you're retired from athletics, then you need to find a new thing. It's going to be a process. It might not happen overnight. It might not happen with a click of your fingers, if you've not kind of laid those foundations already for something new. And I think that's okay as well. Like, I am a massive proponent of being an athlete and something else, and more than an athlete. But if that's too hard or too big in your world, that's absolutely fine as well. Like I said, I did it. I've done it before, and I've really enjoyed that season, because if I had to rush to work the next day or straight after training, or I had to do XYZ, I wouldn't have been able to enjoy the time that I was spending with the other full-time athletes that I was training alongside, and go to go to a pool party, not necessarily a pool party, but go to the pool after training.
The pool party in Loughborough.
Yeah, no, when I was in Phoenix, I know, a pool party in Loughborough. Boo-hoo. But yeah, it was just, like I said, it was joyous those years.
I think I love that though. I think the people they're probably always going to be the most important thing, really.
Yeah.
And also showing to yourself that you can do this as well, so that when you kind of do new things or try and learn new things, you've already proved to yourself that you can do it regardless of how hard it is, which is really cool. The last section that we do on this podcast is Agony Athlete.
Athlete, that's amazing.
We get people to send in their questions, their scenarios, or kind of stories or whatnot, and we discuss them. The wisdom, that is us. So the first one is from Anon. Great name. I've just had an awful indoor season and I'm really struggling for motivation. Do you have any advice as to how I can pick myself up again before outdoors starts?
Oh, speaking to the choir.
You've been there before.
I've been there. I would say, do you know what? Look back at your track record. I'm just trying to think. I'm just remembering again that those words of encouragement that Kelly gave to me after I had a very, very tough 2016 indoor season. I think I did 2 meets and pulled out of the indoor season because it was that terrible. Talent never dies. So if you look back at your track record and you've done well before, put your head down, have that conversation, that reflective conversation with yourself. Look at your training diaries. Have I been giving everything that I need to this? And have a conversation with a coach as well. Like, hey, are we doing everything correctly? Are we following the process? And if you trust that process, lean into it, keep going, persevere. But having those regular reflective check-ins with yourself and with your team is key. And looking back at what you have done. So like you said, with the videos, just looking at that and visualizing the positive. Because often when we come off the back of something terrible, but not so great, like those rubbish seasons. Goodness, my language is so negative. When we come off the back of those rubbish seasons, right? We're very hard on ourselves. And so our language turns hard on ourselves. When we're training, we're probably a bit quicker to berate ourselves, to tell ourselves off when we've not done something well. And we lose that sense of curiosity and fun and engagement in the process. And when you do that, then it's a negative spiral. And you're going to keep doing things wrong because you're focusing on the wrong thing. You get what you focus on. And so, I keep doing this. Why do I keep doing this? Okay, we're going to go back and we're not going to do this thing that I'm telling myself not to do. So you're saying what you're not going to do. You're visualizing what you're not doing and you're doing it. So you need to just reset things, start from a place of curiosity, fun and engagement, and literally go to the next session for the week. Just say, do you know what? This is going to be fun. I want this to be so much fun. I want to find the joy again. I want to engage with this coach. Can we make sure that this is the thing we're going to do for the next week? I just want to try it because I've been so stressed. It's been so difficult. Let's see what happens. And honestly, every time I do that, it's a great reset and things start to go on the up and up. So I hope that can help you as well.
Love it. Enjoyment is key.
It is.
It actually is, to be fair. We should listen to ourselves at times, right?
Definitely.
This one's actually really interesting. My training partner is just returning from an injury and is struggling with fitness, but I'm in the shape of my life. They're obviously quite down about it at training and makes me feel guilty and hard for me to be pleased with my own sessions. Is this something you've experienced before? I don't really know how to approach it.
Oh, this is such a cringe question. I'm cringing because I totally feel you on that, but it's cringe just because I can totally feel your guilt and I can totally feel
I feel
the
like
heaviness.
My forehead started sweating.
Yeah,
already.
the heaviness of you taking that weight on yourself. So I would just say, first of all, that might just be you projecting that feeling of guilt on yourself, but your training partner may not feel that way. So first of all, just check in and be like, okay, is this just me? Or do you really, really sense that something's off, that something's shifted and you need to feel that guilt? Don't think you should. And then secondly, just maybe have that conversation with your training partner and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. And I don't know, just be open, be honest. That level of vulnerability also either is going to draw you closer or push you apart. And maybe that person is, it is what it is. But I hope that it will just draw you closer because you may have a point where you suffer with injury too, and your training partner will be pushing through and having the best sessions of their life. And so if you address it now, it doesn't become an elephant in the room for the next time. And obviously we don't wish negative things. We don't wish injury or niggles on people. But unfortunately, when you're pushing yourself to the limit, sometimes you cross that limit and you break. And so it's about giving yourself grace, giving your training partner grace, having that open and honest conversation. And maybe if you're really not able to move past that, shifting the training times. So potentially so that you don't, because it's so hard to run when you have that guilt on your back. Like that's an extra 2 kilos. And we don't want to be running with those extra 2 or 3 kilos. So just lift that weight off your back, shift the training times if need be, have a conversation with a coach, but ultimately know that after a couple of days, weeks, months, your your training partner is going to be back on track. So you're going to have a good positive relationship. So that's a really difficult question. And I'm going to need to know more details because I don't know whether I answered that very well.
We'll get them to send in a response if they hear it. We'll tell them to grow up.
Oh my goodness, I'm gonna just zip. I'm not saying anything.
I didn't say that. That wasn't me. That was Leonard. And then the last one is actually, it's kind of nice because we covered some of this already. Hi guys, hope you're good. I'm a 400 meter runner in year 13 at school and I'm approaching my A levels. Obviously this time of year is when things start to pick up for track and school, and I'm low-key worried that I won't be able to balance things. And I don't want my performances to slip on the track either. Have you got any tips for balancing the two before and during exam season? Every time, do you remember when we're younger, you go to Bedford or whatever for the age group champs, everyone's there just revising or not?
I'm gonna be I'm that annoying person that didn't revise.
You didn't need to revise because you'd already
got
an A star.
I didn't revise the night before an exam.
Okay, because you were so prepared.
Essentially,
nice.
I think so. Or even if I wasn't
wasn't
prepared, I also realised that whatever was revised, I'd heard. So it might be a myth. So I haven't actually challenged it or checked on it since. But essentially, like, the best thing for that night before the exam is for me to just sleep. So if I'm worried, I sleep. If I'm exhausted, I sleep. If I'm angry, I sleep. In every season, there's just sleep is just that constant in my life. So yeah, I wasn't trying to not sleep before the night before an exam, so I didn't do that. But anyway, I think that if you are managing your time well and you've got like a really good schedule and routine going, I don't think that should necessarily change because competitions begin, because they don't happen every single day, right? And I think when you're at your desk studying, that needs to be your study time. Don't worry about what you're doing on the track. Don't worry about what you're doing in competition. That needs to be your very focused, prioritized, as in the true meaning of the word, study time. And then when you're at the track, give 100, be 100% focused. Say, I've got 2 hours here. I'm going to be so present. I'm not going to worry about my exams. I'm not even, my phone is off or my phone is on silent. I'm just really going to focus on this. And I think when you're truly able to be present in where you are, so when you're at the track, you're at the track. When you're at your desk, you're at your desk. That helps because a lot of time is whittled away with worrying when you're at your desk or when you're at the track. And so you're giving half-heartedly to each thing. And I think the only tip that I can give, aside from obviously good time management, is just that presence of mind and body and spirit and soul when you're in the place that you are.
Nice. I can't wait to tell my mum that because we had a massive argument the night before my GCSE chemistry exam. I was like, I'd already admitted defeat anyway. You picture the scene, right? You picture the scene. My mum comes upstairs, you know those angry footsteps, and you know they're coming. Oh God, they're coming. But that wasn't the case in this situation. I was sat there playing PlayStation with my mates. Not a care in the world about the exam the next day. She comes in, just stands by the door looking at me with that angry face, and I kind of look across. Everything, it went mental. We were shouting, saying, well, I'm going to fail the exam anyway, blah, blah, blah. You've got to try, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. And I was like, it's too late. It's too late. It's too late. Literally, I was sat there like, I'm enjoying myself here. I was literally like, if I'm going to go into the exam tomorrow, like in a better mood, or if I'm going to sit here all night staring at this piece of paper or this textbook with nothing still going in, stressed out my mind, and then get a better sleep, I'll probably do better anyway. She wasn't having any of it. I wasn't having any of it either. So I continued to play FIFA. That's not me giving advice at all. Don't take any advice from me. But yeah, that's good to hear. But I definitely take your advice over
How did
mine.
you do in the exam?
I passed.
Well done.
I don't remember what I got, but it's GCSEs, so as long as you get to the next stage, right?
Absolutely.
What's next for you? What's next for you? Looking forward into the future.
When it comes to the future, right now, I'm literally taking it each day at a time. But big picture goal. I definitely am very unafraid to say I really want to be in Paris in 2024, so I'm working towards that, whatever that looks like in between. I'd love to be in Budapest for the World Champs, hopefully my body plays ball and allows me to jump really far into a sandpit, and I stay healthy and I enjoy this journey. At one point I coined the term with my performance coach. We talk about 500 days of fun, because similar to that person who did the agony athlete request, you know, I just wasn't feeling it. Like the indoors, had to pull out of the indoors through an injury, and yeah, I just was feeling quite deflated. And I was just like, I don't know whether I can go for the next 500 days to Paris feeling this way. Like, it's me or Paris, and I'm gonna choose me. So we had to shift that perspective. So yeah, for me, it's taking each day at a time, each week at a time, trying to have fun, trying not to be too frustrated with myself. And I'm going to learn so many lessons on this journey. I'm looking forward to using them in like future speeches and workshops.
I can't wait to see it, to be honest. I'm really excited. But Abigail, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me on the Athlete Plays podcast.
Super
excited.
Love it. Thank you so much. All right, everyone, we're just going to talk about our biggest project at the Athlete Place, the Athlete Parent Place, where you and your parents get access to content from elite athletes, from your role models, to make your life easier, to make it so that your parents, your number one supporter, know exactly how they can support you best, how they can make your life easier, and how they can increase the chances that you reach your performance goals. Head to theathleteplace.com, click on parents, tell your parents where to find it. They're the ones that are going to be signing up. They're the ones that are going to benefit, but you're the one that's going to have the extra help and reach your performance goals. It's all about you. They're the ones that are helping you get there. Check it out, theathleteplace.com, parents.